As a teenage pizza delivery guy, I had a lot of free time during the week, but Saturday nights were always busy. The phones would ring off the hook, and the orders would just keep coming. Just when I thought my night was over, my manager called and told me I had one last order. I was exhausted and ready to head home, but I reluctantly agreed to take the order. The store usually closed earlier on Saturday nights, but this was a special request, and they needed someone to deliver it. I was upset at first, but I want to end the day in the best way. I turned on some music in my old beat-up Ford Escort to keep myself awake. I was getting really tired, and I was just ready to go the hell home. I couldn't help but wonder who would be ordering pizza so late at night. I know all the roads here, but the delivery address was in a suburban area that I wasn't familiar with. I relied on my phone's GPS to guide me to the right location. Relying on my phone's GPS to guide me to the right location, I soon realized that I was in the wrong place. I was right in the middle of the road with a small alley that couldn't be accessed by cars. I checked the GPS again and saw that I was at the wrong address. Feeling frustrated, I decided to turn back and find the correct address. I retraced my steps and found the correct address a few blocks away. When I finally arrived at the correct address, it was in an alley where cars couldn't get in. I had to park my car and walk the rest of the way to the door. As I approached the door, I noticed that the lights were off and there was no sign of life inside. I rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. I checked the address again to make sure I was at the right place. Confused, I called the store to let them know that there was no answer at the door. My manager told me to wait a few minutes and try again. I did as I was told and rang the doorbell again, but still no answer. I decided to leave the pizza on the doorstep and head back to my car. Just as I was about to turn around, I heard a shuffling noise coming from inside the house. I was hesitant at first, but I decided to knock on the door again because I wanted to get my tip, so I decided to be persistent. But still, no one answered. What the hell is going on with me? I wondered while I went to my car. The odd thing is that I heard strange noises in the alley. When I turned around, I saw a man walking towards me. At first, I thought he was the person who had ordered the pizza. "Are you a pizza ordered, sir?" I said. But as he got closer with something behind, I realized that he looked suspicious. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I realized that he might intend to attack me. I tried to back away, but the man continued to approach me, moving quickly towards me. I asked who he was, but he didn't answer. I had no idea what this man wanted from me, and I wondered if this was going to be the end for me. And I thought I need to do something to protect myself. I looked around for something to use as a weapon, but there was nothing within reach. Just when I thought I was out of options, I saw the man holding something sharp. I quickly realized that I was in danger, and I had to act fast to protect myself. I didn't want to take any chances, so I quickly returned to my car, got inside and locked the doors. My heart was pounding in my chest as I watched the man move closer through the windows. But to my horror, he suddenly approached my car and started trying to break the windows. So I needed to get out of there as soon as possible. I started the engine and put the car in reverse, but the man was relentless in his pursuit. He was pounding on the windows and trying to break them with whatever he was holding. In my haste to escape, I backed up quickly, but I hit the mailbox of the house up the alley. The impact was enough to jar me, but I didn't stop to assess the damage. I put the car in drive and hit the gas, speeding away from the scene as quickly as I could. I could see the man running after me in the rearview mirror, but I didn't look back. On the way back to the store, I made the decision to inform the police about the incident. I knew that they would be better equipped to handle the situation and investigate what had happened. I was still shaken up, but I was able to give them a description of the man and what had happened. It was a long and eventful night, but I was grateful to be able to return home safely. I made a mental note to always trust my instincts and to always be cautious, especially when working late at night. I hoped that the police would be able to find the man and get to the bottom of what had happened, but in the meantime, I was just glad to be back home and away from the danger. I was a student in suburban Ohio who was proficient in all delivery routes as I worked part-time at a local pizza shop. Someday during my evening shift, I was tasked with delivering an order to an odd address that I had never seen before. I was hesitant at first, but my job was to deliver pizzas, so I set out on my delivery. As I drove down the narrow dirt roads that led to the unfamiliar address, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The forest was thick and ominous, and the shadows grew longer with each passing moment. Suddenly, I saw a black shadow walk past the side of the road, causing me to swerve in fear. But I was determined to complete the delivery, so I took a deep breath and continued on. When I finally arrived at the address, I was faced with an old, decrepit mansion that seemed to loom over me like a dark omen. I approached the door and rang the bell, but there was no answer. Just as I was about to leave the mansion, the door creaked open again, and a tall man stepped out of the mansion with a fierce look on his face. He was a towering figure, with broad shoulders and a menacing demeanor. His eyes were deep and dark, and I felt like I was penetrating my own soul. I could feel the fear rising in my chest as I stood face to face with the tall man. The inside of the mansion was just as eerie as the outside. The walls were adorned with old dusty paintings and the furniture was outdated. Strange noises echoed throughout the halls, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The tall man led me to a dimly lit room where he offered me a seat. I sat down nervously, my heart racing. I just wanted to take the money and get out of there as quickly as possible, but the tall man's request made me uneasy. I reluctantly followed him as he led me deeper into the mansion. The further we went, the more sinister the place felt. The air was thick with an oppressive feeling, and I could hear strange whispers coming from the shadows. Suddenly, the tall man stopped and turned to face me. He reached out with a bony hand and grabbed me by the arm, pulling me closer. In that moment of panic, I knew I had to protect myself. I swung my arm up, hitting the tall man in the forehead with all my strength. He stumbled back, giving me the opportunity to break free. I turned and ran as fast as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear the tall man behind me, but I didn't dare look back. I burst through the front door of the mansion and sprinted to my car. I drove away as quickly as I could. As I drove away, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the tall man pursuing me. But when I looked back, I saw that he was standing in the doorway of the mansion, watching me as I drove away. I was relieved to have escaped, but I knew that I needed to tell someone about what had just happened. When I got back to the pizza shop, I told my boss what had happened. He immediately called the police and reported the strange mansion and the tall man. The police investigated the house, but they didn't find anyone there. They couldn't find any evidence of the tall man or anything else that would indicate that something strange was going on. Even though the police couldn't find any evidence, the memories of the mansion and the tall man were still fresh in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was not right about that place. To this day, I wonder what might have happened if I had never taken that delivery. It was a busy Friday night at Mario's Pizzeria, and the orders were pouring in. That's when the phone rang and a customer requested a delivery, and a sense of excitement for his first solo delivery, I answered the phone. Mario's Pizzeria, this is Luigi speaking, I said, with a smile in my voice. But the voice on the other end of the line was not what I expected. It was a hoarse, trembling voice of an old woman who spoke in a trembling tone. "Hello, I would like to place an order for delivery," she said. I took down the order and confirmed the address, but as I hung up the phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The old woman's voice and the background noise had given me a little shiver. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I had a feeling I was in for a rough night. With a deep breath, I grabbed the pizza and headed out the door, determined to complete my first delivery successfully. As I drove to the address, I realized that the delivery route led me to a rough road with no lights. The darkness of the night and the unfamiliar surroundings made me a bit nervous, but I pushed those thoughts aside and continued on my journey. After driving for a while, the surroundings suddenly became quiet, except for the sounds of frogs croaking and the thick fog that obscured my sight. I couldn't see more than a few feet in front of me, and I was starting to get worried. I was so focused on navigating the road ahead that I didn't notice when my car hit something. The impact was enough to jolt me out of my thoughts, and I quickly got out to check what had happened. As I approached the front of the car, I was surprised to find that one of my tires was flat. I sighed and looked around trying to get my bearings, but the fog was so thick that I couldn't see anything beyond a few feet in any direction. I was starting to feel a sense of unease when I suddenly heard a sound coming from somewhere in the distance. I couldn't tell what it was, but it was definitely not the sound of frogs. I felt a chill run down my spine, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone in the darkness. I quickly realized that I needed to change the tire, but I had no idea how to do it. I tried to call for help, but there was no signal on my phone. As I was struggling with the tire, I suddenly heard a soft rustling in the bushes nearby. I turned around, but I couldn't see anything through the fog. I was starting to feel really scared when a figure emerged from the darkness. As I stood there, frozen with fear, the figure emerged from the darkness. It was a large man dressed in a hooded cloak, who slowly moved closer. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel the man's eyes on me. The man said nothing, but his presence was enough to make I feel extremely uneasy. The man took another step closer, and I realized that I needed to act. I panicked and yelled, hoping that someone would hear me and come to my aid, but the man didn't seem to be affected by my outburst. Instead, he continued to move closer until he was standing just a few feet away from me. Fearing for my safety, I tried to get back into the car with trembling hands. I fumbled with the door handle, but finally managed to open it. I quickly jumped into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut behind me. With shaking hands, I reached for the lock button on the car door and pressed it. However, my sense of safety was short-lived. Suddenly, the man ran over quickly and banged on the door of the car, trying to get me to open the door. I was in a state of panic, not knowing what to do. I tried to start the car, but the engine wouldn't turn over. I tried again, and this time, the engine roared to life. With a broken tire and the car now only having 3 wheels, I put the pedal to the metal, trying to get out of there as fast as I could. Even though the man was still close behind, I was focused on getting away. I was trying to get as far away from the man as I could, so I swerved around obstructions in the road, dodging trees and rocks. I was focused on leaving even though the car was bouncing around on the bumpy road. I was in danger, but I wasn't going to give up. I pushed the car to its absolute limits while never letting up on the gas. While the man drew nearer, I was moving farther and farther away. I finally noticed the lights of civilization in the distance after what felt like hours. Knowing that I had arrived safely made me feel a sense of relief. My heart was pounding as I stopped the car and pulled over. I took a few deep breaths to calm down, and then I reached for my phone. I called the police to report the incident, describing everything that had happened to the best of my ability. The police arrived soon after, and they launched an investigation into the strange man on the road. After talking to several witnesses and scouring the area, they reported that there had been several similar incidents in the past, and that there was indeed a strange man who was known to roam the road at night. I was shocked to hear this, but I was also grateful to be alive. Despite the scare, I was determined to continue making deliveries for Mario's Pizzeria. I knew that it was my job, and I was proud to serve my customers, even if it meant putting myself in harm's way. I took extra precautions from then on, always keeping my phone and a flashlight with me. I never forgot that night, and I always remembered the importance of being prepared for anything.